Hi everyone, and welcome to the first ever episode of Virtua Talks News. And that's with myself, Harry Cole from the communications team here at Virtua, and Leon Waters from our content team.
Hey guys, how's it going? All good?
Thanks, Leon. So today we're going to be talking about some of the hot topics that have landed in the news in the last month. Leon and I are going to kind of discuss things that we found interesting, why we found them interesting, and potentially the impact they might have on the industry. So I'm going to go first, and I wanted to start by talking about our digital ownership report, which came out originally in July, and then part two came out last month in September. So the first part of the report focused on digital items. A digital item is something that's not a physical item, essentially, and digital items have risen in popularity due to gaming, due to television and video, due to music. So essentially anything that is a digital piece of code can be a digital item. And that's significant for us as a business because virtual, as we go into the metaverse, the things that we'll take into the metaverse will be digital items. So part one, as I say, was digital items, and part two was more of a focus on the metaverse. And some of the interesting things that we found in the second part of the report was the growing popularity and adoption of digital items in the metaverse from Gen Z. So I'm just going to read out a couple of figures here before I get Leon's input on what he thinks. So 60% of Gen Z in the UK are more likely to buy digital land than physical property due to its affordability. So that's over 50%. Over half, 51% of Gen Z in the UK think digital real estate will provide a more significant return on investment than physical property in 5 years' time. And almost half of millennial respondents, 49%, said that purchasing digital land will give them access to communities who share their passions and interests. And finally, nearly three-quarters of Gen Z, 72%, say that owning digital items feels no different to owning something physical. So, Leon, what do you think of those findings? Were you surprised? And what do you think of the wider ramifications?
Yeah, I mean, so my background is in the music industry, and also I'm millennial, so I kind of like within that kind of like gap between like the what they call the boomer generation and Gen Z. So I've kind of like seen the transition of that kind of in real time, and also within the content and media industry. So I find it really interesting, and I think that because we have this new generation coming through and they're all digital natives, people are growing up with online games, social media, smartphones. I mean, the smartphone now has been around for like something like 15 years. So anyone who's at the age of 15 right now was born when those things kind of came into mainstream awareness. So that's a really, really huge deal. And it's really important to make sure that people who are in that generation are kind of being accounted for with product provision, with marketing, with the metaverse, with Web3 and everything else. They're digital natives already to a greater extent than kind of any older people are. And they're going to be the future of the economy, the future of society and so forth. So they really need to be taken into account. So I think that's really important. And also the metaverse as well is going to be the next stage of that as well. So that's really huge. The other side of that stuff is with digital ownership, for instance. It's a really big deal that I kind of like see, and I know that you see as well, like behind the scenes at Virtua when we're working on projects. That's a huge deal for people who are creating digital art, and that's not just visual art, but it can be like digital art, it can be visual art, it can be music. So it's really important for visual artists, really important for musicians, anyone who's really creating any kind of digital content, because historically, for the last like 25 years, it's been very difficult to turn that into an income source. Because you have online file sharing, and that's also decentralized. So it's very hard to fight against. And if someone wants something online, they can just kind of go and get it for free. So NFTs kind of like bring in a more of a sense of ownership and value. And as we get into more utility with NFTs, then they'll have added value on top of that as well, which will be worth really kind of like more in a lot of different ways to people who actually own those things. So it's a move back to ownership versus access from streaming, and previously had kind of like ownership in the form of MP3s and downloading as well. So for content industries, it's really, really huge. It's a massive thing.
I think, yeah, I totally agree. And I think one thing I think I was personally surprised about is I knew that, adoption would be happening. I just didn't realize how rapidly Gen Z were picking up on these things. looking at digital property as an investment versus physical property, generationally, it will get more and more difficult to get onto the property ladder, especially in the UK. I mean, you look at interest rates and things like that are rising at the moment. And I think Gen Z looking at that as a possible option, it demonstrates a significant change in people's perceptions of value, and also where they think that they'll be able to, live, work, and play.
Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, the thing for me is that like numbers can go up and down, but really, virtual real estate is kind of a way to have an experience in the metaverse that you can't get anywhere else. So you don't just have access to a platform or to an environment, but you also have your own place within the metaverse, and you can make that feel like your home. You can make it your home. And it's a really personal thing. So I think that's one of the things that's really cool about it. And for sure, like the more kind of like economic side of things is a really big deal too. But as we kind of move more into Web3 in the metaverse, it's going to be really important for you to have that sense of like, it feels like home. It doesn't just feel like you're going into a place which has been pre-decided and predetermined for you, even though those things are going to be really cool. And we've got some things which are going to be really amazing in the metaverse. Being able to like make things feel like they're a part of you, or kind of like an extension of you, is really going to be the big deal, I think, for the metaverse as well, and that sense of immersion in it.
Wow, yeah, I think the penny is dropping on how people's home will be in the metaverse, and it's a very realistic prospect in a very short period of time.
Yeah, it's really really quick. I mean, I'd say I'm kind of like surprised how, because I come from the music industry again. For me, it kind of like feels surprising as to how long it's taken in some industries for people to like really develop strategies for these technologies. But the consumer adoption on the one hand has been really quick. So there's this kind of like slow response from some industries and from some strategists. And that kind of like jars a little bit with the fact that consumers have picked these things up so quickly, because if you look at the NFT market from the last year and a half, like it goes up and down, it does whatever, it'll go up again, it'll go down again, whatever. But yeah, these things work in cycles, but there's this kind of like clash where the consumer adoption has been really quick, but the response to the emergence of these technologies has been relatively slow. I mean, the music industry, for instance, has been aware of blockchain for a long time. It's how I got into Web3, it's through that industry, and it's been around for a long time. But people have not yet really developed like full strategies on how to approach Web3, blockchain, crypto, the metaverse, NFTs, all of these things. So now that people are realizing that it is actually a big deal, it's not going to go away, it's decentralized, you can't fight it, it's going to happen. So now it's down to people kind of like to develop strategies, and especially again, utility. Utility is the number one thing over and over again that I see with the projects that they're out there. It's really about having that extra value and expanding beyond this is just a JPEG or this is a video. The advertising, the models and stuff that we're doing right now with VFlex and stuff like that is a really huge thing. I think that's amazing. I'm getting my own little VFlex collection now. I'm kind of like developing that because that's really, really cool. And it gives you something that you can do besides just having an asset. So it's a really big deal for that, I think.
Definitely. And just to close off, talking about the report, it's interesting that, I'm a millennial as well, and we've lived through Web 1, Web 2, and then Web 3 is on the way. And, these were significant shifts. And I was sitting in on an interview with Jawad recently, Ashraf, our CEO, and he was talking about, brands need to be ready for this space because Gen Z is going to be there. And if you want to reach people, it's kind of like similar to Web 1 when everyone was on the internet, some brands got left behind. When we went to Web 2 and everybody was suddenly mobile, some brands got left behind. And as you say, brands that aren't ready for Web 3 are going to be left behind. It's happening right now, and everybody needs to be ready for it.
Yeah, it's about kind of like keeping up with the times, and consumers are doing that faster than businesses are, I think. And one of the cool things about working for Virtua and seeing the stuff that we're doing is that we are helping to kind of like accelerate that industry adoption, which is really cool. And definitely like the things that Jawad and all our founders and all our team talk about, like it's really, really important that people kind of understand that and really kind of internalize it, because there's going to come a point where if you're not doing these things, then you're going to be stuck, and you don't want to be in that position at all.
Absolutely. Next on our list, we've got the Cardano Island claim event. So, do you want to give it a bit of an intro on that one? And it's a significant moment for us, but also for the wider industry.
Yeah, sure. Again, I'm kind of like everywhere in Virtua, so I've been involved in Cardano Island quite a bit. And one of the things I've kind of noticed behind the scenes is there is a little bit of kind of like a couple of things to clarify, basically. So the way that this process works is that we have land plots and land deeds. So if you have a land deed and you can mint them, we've had a lot of minting events for that, and sometimes you get a special reward for things, which are really cool. So a land deed entitles you to claim a plot of land on Cardano Island. It's not the land plot itself; it entitles you to claim one. So what we've done recently, we've already had the mint windows for the land deeds, so those are going to be like ongoing as well. There will be more mint windows, but also we have the land claim event, which we've just done. And that was like a 5-day event where gradually kind of like allowed people to claim land plots according to how rare their land deeds were. And so you can go onto this claim portal, which is an interactive map of Cardano Island, and it looks amazing. It's high fidelity. It's amazing. It looks really cool. I actually have a land plot on there as well. When I was using it, I was like, this is just amazing. That's really, really fun to do it. And like trying to find like where I was going to place my plot and everything else. So you have a massive map and you can choose where you want your land plot to go based on the size and based on availability as well. Like if it's available, you can claim it. And so that's kind of like what we've just done. And so it's gone really well. We got a lot of really good feedback. The important thing for people to really bear in mind, because it may have been missed along the way, perhaps, there is a difference between land deeds and land plots. So a deed entitles you to claim a plot, and then you can go to the claim portal. When you have a deed, you can claim a plot through that. So yeah, it's a really, really cool event, and everything that we've been doing with it is it's gone really well from what I've seen, and everyone's really happy with it. And my personal experience with it, because I use Google Chrome and Nami Wallet and things like that, things that are very compatible with our tech, it works really well. It's just been really smooth. So cool.
It's it's been great. I think some of the significant points as well, obviously, that we included in some of our outreach was around this being a bit of a world's first, and especially on the Cardano chain. There are Metaverse players, obviously, on the chain alongside what we're doing, but the way that the claim has gone ahead, and the way that people can select their plots, and the interactive map as well of the island gradually getting filled up with different people taking their plots, and some of the tactics as well, I think has been really interesting in terms of how people have decided where they want to be. And it's location. Obviously in the physical space has always been really important, but then here we're looking at people taking decisions about where they want to be, close to friends, close to landmarks, close to hubs, or do they want to be somewhere where there's more sort of virtual land for them to play with? Have you noticed that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, while I chose my plot, I got in a little bit late, but I was lucky enough to find a little plot which is next to a small piece of water and a little, it's like a kind of private road. So I saw that and I was like, well, I'm going to have that. And I thought, it just looks cool. But I think one of the really big things for this is community. And I think that's one of the big things that makes the Cardano Island project what it is. Because I spend a lot of time lurking in Discord and keeping an eye on what the community say. We have a lot of channels where we talk about feedback from the community, and people have been really happy with this. But it's also cool to see people kind of forming their own communities and saying, okay, well, who owns yachts here? Who owns jets? Who wants to be near to the airstrip? Who wants to be near to the Virtua hub or Cardano HQ? And there's a video we have on our YouTube as well, which has a guide to the map as well. So that's worth checking out. But yeah, it's really cool to see that how the community's kind of responded to it, how they've kind of like guided us and kind of like given us really good feedback. And also, they're working on ways to kind of like self-organize and to say, okay, if you're living in this area or you have these particular kind of like vehicles or these VFlex or whatever, then we're going to make a kind of special club for it. I think there'll be a Cardano Islands Yacht Club at some point, so that's going to be cool. And I've got some yachts, so I'm happy with that.
Yeah, that's great. As you say, it's so nice to see these things kind of happen organically within the community, kind of totally not set up by us, but we can support as they continue to come together.
Yeah, and that's what it's really about. It's about listening to the community and working out how we can kind of work with their feedback and make things, just improve things and come up with new ideas and things like that. We're always discussing these things. It's one thing to really stress with the community-facing thing. We're always reading and looking to see what people are saying, and we're always looking to do what we can to kind of make the experience even better and better and better and better.
Yeah, absolutely. Really. And so next on our list, we've got a interesting piece of news, which it was picked up by the BBC amongst many, many others. And this is the merge that took place on the Ethereum network. It almost feels like old news now, which is absolutely crazy to say, seeing it taken months and months to come together by the Ethereum network. But I think a testament to how well it's gone is the lack of the requirement for follow-up stories, because it's all gone so well. There's not much to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, Vitalik recently released a book called Proof of Stake. So it's kind of a collection of all of his historical essays, because his involvement in Web3 has gone back to being an editor of Bitcoin magazine, from writing the Ethereum white paper to developing the whole concept. And even years and years and years ago, he was talking about moving Ethereum from proof of work, which is kind of quite energy intensive, it has to be, to a proof of stake system, which is a different form of consensus. So he's been talking about that for a long time. ETH 2.0, as it's kind of been referred to. Originally, people thought it was going to be one stage and then we'd just be done with it. But now they have a full roadmap to go even further than they already have. But they've already cut their energy emissions by 99%, which is a massive, massive number. And Polygon, which is an Ethereum sidechain, a layer 2 sidechain that we use, has also had its energy emissions cut by that amount as well. So it's really a really big deal in terms of that. And a really massive thing that whenever I talk to people about the merge, or about the environment of Web3, because that can be quite controversial, everyone always has a view on it. The thing is that when people have really strong opinions about Web3, and everyone kind of does once they kind of start learning about it, those opinions have to change over time, or be kind of readjusted over time to account for changes in the technology, because Web3 is always evolving, and this is an example of that. So prior to the merge, we had Ethereum being a proof of work network, very energy intensive, and a lot of stories are written about that in itself. And now that's been taken away. 99% of those emissions have been taken away. So that requires a kind of reevaluation of how people conceive of Web3, because the way that Web3 looks in 20 years' time or 10 years' time is going to be completely different to how it looks now. If you go back to the days of IBM making computers, the people who made those computers thought they were going to have 18 computers in the world. 18. So can you imagine going back in time and trying to explain Bitcoin to them, right? A decentralized peer-to-peer network distributed across the world, tens of thousands of computers. Can you imagine showing them a video of a mining farm? They blow their minds, and they made the computers. So the way that we're conceiving of Web3 right now, and the metaverse and everything else, is going to change drastically. And really, I've really noticed that these things really kind of evoke a lot of very strong emotions in people and strong opinions in people, and that's great. It's really cool. It's all valid, but those things have to be reevaluated over time, because the way that Ethereum is now is different to how it was very, very recently. I think it's a few weeks ago now, 2 weeks ago. So that in itself requires reevaluation. So as long as people bear that in mind, and they kind of keep an eye on how things change, and they take those things into account instead of saying this is good or this is bad, or I think this or I think that, based on outdated information, then that's really important. It's kind of changing your opinions over time based on the reality of a situation, not how you read about it 2 years ago.
Absolutely. I think, as you say, it's changed the whole industry, what they've done. And often in the news, one of the big stories that's been out there since Bitcoin, really established itself, and cryptocurrencies, was this drain on resources, this drain on energy, how much it costs to maintain. And now that Ethereum has moved away from that, that story is almost, apart from its relevance to Bitcoin, is a little bit dead in the water now. And that was a major reason why people were not adopting cryptocurrencies. So yeah, it's been a real game changer.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with the environment, so not to get too much into it, because it's controversial, there's lots and lots of different views and different statistics based on where you go. But one thing we kind of really need to focus, like as a society, I think, is renewable energy. Because if you have renewable energy, then the amount of energy that you're using matters less because it's renewable. If it's something which is coming from a non-renewable source, that can be problematic, because then, okay, where are you going to renew the energy? Well, you can't, because it's not possible. So the energy sources kind of like need to change as well beyond that. But it's really a sign. And again, like Veteran's been talking about this for a long time, like years and years and years. And people now are talking about ways to make things more efficient, make things more energy efficient, make them more scalable and everything else. And there's a full roadmap for ETH, which is going to continue. So yeah, I mean, to that kind of like point, it's all about change. It's not about staying the same. If you follow the crypto news, follow all the different news sources, every single day there's something else which comes up. There's some new idea, there's some new person who's just emerged with a new idea, there's some new project that's doing something. Virtua is doing all sorts of different things within the metaverse and everything else, and we're using Polygon, which is a layer 2 system. So we're paying attention to it. Everyone needs to pay attention to it, and we'll see how it goes in like 10 years time, 20 years time. It'll be something completely different. So
absolutely. Next on our list, we've got Japan investing in the metaverse and NFTs. You want to take the lead on this one?
Well, yeah, I mean, so recently Japan and a lot of different governments around the world now actually really to the point are kind of investing in Web3 technologies and kind of like accepting things a little bit more. So for instance, a few years ago, or even as recently as like a year ago, really, I was having all sorts of debates with various people about, okay, is the government going to ban Bitcoin or crypto or Web3 or whatever, like all these different things that people think, and people are saying, okay, well, like, is blockchain a scam? Well, is blockchain a scam? No more than text messaging is a scam or email is. Like, people use it to do different things, but that requires kind of like cybersecurity awareness on your part to defend against those things. But in terms of, so with the government, for instance, people even a year ago were saying, okay, our government's going to ban Bitcoin because of these different aspects of the technology and how it can be used. And now governments are turning around and saying, well, we've realized we can't fight it because it's decentralized, and it's like playing whack-a-mole with ghosts. You're not going to be able to really technically ban Bitcoin or remove it from the face of the earth without destroying every single server that runs it. If you have a few servers that run it, it could still work. It's designed that way. So for governments, the way they're kind of like embracing this technology now is through regulation and taxation, and that landscape will change over time as well. It's another example of the evolution of the industry and how these things are going to work, but they're really important for mass adoption, because if a government in your country is trying to fight this technology, it's going to make it harder for you to use it. There'll still be ways to do it, but it's going to make it harder for you. It's going to stifle innovation within that country tech-wise. It's going to stifle any businesses. There will be no economic advantages to having that technology in the country. And in the UK, for instance, we're doing a little bit of a better job of embracing that technology and finding a way to simplify taxes around it and have regulation around it. And in America, they're doing the same thing as well. People a year ago thought America was going to ban Bitcoin. Now it's it's doing reviews and it's working out ways to make these technologies work. So governments doing that is really it's part of mass adoption. It's inevitable. Again, a few years ago, people thought that all these governments were just going to fight this technology and kind of like try and ban it. And now it's looking a lot more positive. And again, we'll see how it turns out. It's going to take time. Governments work very slowly, and you have election cycles and everything else, so it takes time. But it does look positive, and it's more positive than will America ban Bitcoin? Will X country ban Bitcoin? It's a lot better.
And I think another kind of Japan are doing it. South Korea has been a major investor and adopter of the metaverse, and also Dubai as well, where obviously we have a lot of our colleagues, and it's kind of our second home as a business. They have just been completing the Dubai Metaverse Assembly as of right now, last week. So there's some countries that are really getting behind the metaverse and obviously want to be the ones to embrace it early and take it into the future. Yeah,
I mean, as the perfect example of a global entity trying to fight a decentralized computer network, you only have to look at the music industry. Around about like 23 years ago, like file sharing networks started popping up where people could like rip music off of CDs. They can upload things to first like Napster, LimeWire, Pirate Bay, all these other different platforms. And as these platforms became more decentralized, even they exist still today, the music industry tries to fight them, and it's failed for 20 years. It's wasted like 23 years trying to fight these technologies, and it's chasing a ghost. That's all they're doing. To the point now where they've turned to streaming services. Eventually, they had the adoption of downloads. Eventually, they had streaming services. Eventually, but they've lost a lot of revenue in the meantime. The music industry got cut in half pretty much, and it's not recovered to its previous high yet, if it ever will do. So, as a government, as a financial system, as an economy, you don't want that situation to be happening with your country, with your economy. The music industry got devastated by the ignorance of the industry at the time when it came to decentralized technology. Governments are now recognizing, okay, well, if we're trying to ban these things, we're not really going to be able to do it. Some countries which are more dictatorships and things that are very autocratic are going to be more authoritarian, are going to try their best to fight it, but they will fail. And it's going to cause more problems for them than it will any benefits. And in Western democracies, we're having a lot more adoption of these things. So it's a wise move overall, and it's an important part of mass adoption, like I was saying. So, yeah.
So from government entities to private entities.
Indeed. Yeah.
NFTs on Instagram and Facebook. So now we're talking about mass adoption, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so social platforms integrating NFTs. Yeah, it's a huge part of mass adoption because we still have these kind of generation gaps that we're saying. We're still talking about Gen Z, millennials, boomers, etc. But these social platforms kind of where everyone kind of comes together, and over time people kind of like become natives to these technologies, especially over the last few years with the more adoption of digital communications tech, all these different things. So even people from like a lot older generations, like even like pre-war generations, are kind of like adopting video calls and social media and text messages and emails and things like that because we kind of had to over the last few years. So the NFT concept being, and Web3 in general, moving into social media, it's kind of this Web 2.5 thing, which I think we kind of refer to sometimes. And so we had these kind of crossover points between Web 2 and Web 3, and NFTs on Facebook and Instagram will be part of that. The one thing that I really want to see with social media using NFTs is better metadata validation, because I have a picture of my face as an NFT that I made into an NFT. So I could use it on Twitter with a little hexagon thing. It could be an NFT. But then when I put it onto Twitter, it made the metadata completely random and got it completely wrong. So if I clicked on the NFT, the metadata said it was created by someone called the Great Seahorse of Ore, some random like OpenSea artist who makes like pictures of like trainers, sneakers and stuff like that. And I was like, what is this? So I can't have my NFT of my face on Twitter because if anyone clicks on it, they're going to think I'm like making all these weird artworks on OpenSea as some rando. So I was like, I can't have that. So that's one thing, and also security as well. A lot of people are worried about KYC and identity connection to an anonymous wallet that's on, or a wallet address that's on a public ledger. So there are security concerns perhaps, and metadata concerns. So there are things which do need to be addressed still. But as part of mass adoption, again, people are going to want to share their NFTs on their Instagram stories, on their Facebook page, all these different things. And it enables them to do that. For creators, it's really good because that means that they can put those things on their pages. I think that's probably the best application for it. Again, with these technologies, I really think that it's a really big thing for the creators as well as the consumers. It's great for the consumers because they get a sense of connection to the artist and everything else. But for the artist, it's really important to remember that these people spend so much time making their art. If it's a visual art piece, or if it's an album, if it's a song, anything else, these things take time. And people pay a lot of money to get the technology in order to record these things and to actually create them. And yet, historically, for the last 25 years, it's been very hard to turn that into money and to actually recoup that cost of actually making the thing in the first place. So that's a really big thing for those people. And I think that it enables people to support those creators through social media, through social platforms, using NFTs. You see it on their page, you can maybe go and buy it on a marketplace, or you can find a way to share it with your friends. And it raises awareness of NFTs and helps with mass adoption, and it helps the creators as well, which is something we really need to kind of bear in mind, I think, as an industry and also as an audience and a kind of like a market of people who are buying these things. These things come from somewhere. They take time and money to actually make, and so they have always had value. But now we're kind of like seeing more of a sense of value perception within that market. So yeah, it's all good. There's some things we need to keep in mind, but overall it's really positive. And I think the metaverse and NFTs are going to be a lot more fun than scrolling through a newsfeed. When we eventually have like Cardano Island, I'd rather be on Cardano Island talking with people, or like seeing educational content or news content in real time, something in the metaverse, versus sitting on my phone, I'm just scrolling through a newsfeed. Like, it's going to be a lot more immersive. It's going to be a lot more fun. It's going to be in 3D, it'll be social, like actually social, in a kind of like almost tangible kind of way. So I think it's all going to be positive overall. I think I'm really optimistic about it. Absolutely. There's a few things that just need to be taken into account.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's two ends of the scale, isn't it? You know, once everybody can create an NFT and they can use it as their profile picture, versus when there is, you know, a finite amount of NFTs made by a particular artist or something like that. You've got the two ends of the scale. But, you know, it's really good to talk about NFTs in this way, because, you know, the final topic we're going to come on to is NFT ticketing. Spotted a story obviously this week in CoinDesk in regards to Ticketmaster partnering with Dapper Labs to issue NFTs as tickets. Sports events, you know, music events, obviously you're an area of interest for you, but it could be tickets to the cinema one day, can be NFTs, and this kind of process of adding utility is something that I think is really interesting, that you would never be able to do with a traditional ticket or a digital ticket. You can go back and you can continue to add utility. So you could create prize draws, you could do free giveaways, you could create collections, be it, you know, your favorite sports team or your favorite music artist, or, you know, you like going to the theatre, to the opera. You can create these great collections which could come with magazines, things like that. So I think we're really, you know, the tip of the iceberg with NFT ticketing at this time. You know, what are your thoughts and feelings on where it might go next?
Yeah, I think it's a really cool concept because, I've been in the music industry for like 20 years before Virtua kind of pulled me out of it to come and work at Virtua. And I used to go to so many gigs and so many shows, and I used to collect all the tickets. I used to have like a box that I kept all these things in. And eventually it just kind of like overflowed, and like it takes up space. You don't really kind of like want to go through every single show ticket you ever bought in your life after a certain point. So for some people, these things have like real sentimental value as physical objects, but also now again with Gen Z, with digital natives, and also myself as well. Still, like, I think I can look at a picture of a ticket, as long as it looks cool, maybe it's got some really cool art on it, and still have that kind of like sense of like the sense of ownership for one thing, and also the sentimental value, the kind of like emotional experience of reliving that kind of event, and it takes you back to a certain time when you went, that kind of, even when you went to see that really amazing show. So it's really, really valuable in that sense, and also you don't have to worry about losing the ticket. We already have e-tickets, but also with NFTs, it means that you can have an extra level of cryptographic verification to actually say you own this ticket. Like, someone can't just nick it off you in some way. No one can, like, a blockchain is essentially immutable. It's very difficult to actually kind of like steal an NFT for the most part, unless it's through some kind of user error, which comes down to security and personal cyber security, and kind of like security for that. It's really important. So yeah, with tickets though, for me personally, I think that I'd rather have an NFT ticket than a physical ticket, definitely, because it's something which is still there. It's kind of, it has that same kind of sense of ownership and emotional value, which are the two main things, I think. The physical thing, it just takes up too much space, and then after a while you want to throw it out, and then you realize you've got a big box. I've been there, and I didn't really kind of like that experience. So yeah, but also with utility as well. Again, it's something we return to quite a lot behind the scenes at Virtua, things that we about with our projects as well, and things that we're working on. It's all about kind of having this extra sense of value and extra content and things like that. The perks and benefits, membership discounts, exclusive content, extra content, all these different things, which can come with an NFT. So it's not just a picture or a video or anything, whatever it might be. So also, if you look at the music industry again, you've got like Muse, Kings of Leon, Grimes, you've got The Weeknd, you've got Eminem, you have Snoop Dogg, and these people who kind of like get into Web3, but it's newsworthy when it happens. I mean, if you think about it, if you download an MP3, if someone brings out a song that comes out on MP3, and you can get it as a download from iTunes, right? Or you can go and stream it on Spotify. Nobody makes a news article about that. No one says, "Oh my God, this thing's on Spotify," or "Oh my God, you can download this song," because we're used to it. But if someone does something in Web3, someone does something on an NFT platform, or they do some sort of like NFT collection or something like that, it's newsworthy because we're not used to it. And so it shows that it shows you that it's still early days. It's still really kind of like early on in kind of like the product cycle as well for NFTs. Yeah, but I think it's another thing that's going to be really positive. But for ticketing, I think especially that's kind of like one of the main short-term kind of like focuses, I think, for NFTs in events for sure, because you can have that thing of you have that access, you have the sense of ownership, you have that emotional value to it as well. It kind of ticks most of the boxes, I think. Yeah.
And as you say, you know, we've only just begun, and we can, you know, continue to see what happens in the future. Great. Well, Leon, thanks so much for joining me on this, the first ever episode of Virtua Talks News, and I look forward to jumping on again with you next in about a month's time, where we can digest some more of what's happening in the news in crypto, metaverse, and blockchain.
Yeah, cool. Well, yeah, by that point, there'll be a whole other new story to talk about. So, yeah, something I love about the space, just how quickly it evolves. And in a month's time, we'll have even more stuff to talk about. So,
exactly. Look forward to it. Thanks for tuning in, guys. See you next time.
hey everyone. Cool. Bye.